picture this. You're sitting in the driver's seat of your car,
Okay.
and you're completely boxed in by dead-stop traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Horns are blaring, your phone is vibrating with urgent emails, and your stress levels are just, they're absolutely through the roof.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. And every possible exit ramp looks like it's going to lead to an even bigger, more complicated disaster.
Hmm.
So do you just abandon the car and walk away to escape the chaos?
Right. Just leave it on the highway.
Yeah. Or do you hit the gas the second a 6-inch gap opens up, risking a catastrophic crash just to feel like you're finally moving?
I mean, it's that feeling of being trapped in the modern paralysis of choice.
Exactly. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're using a 2,000-year-old battlefield manual to figure out how to drive out of that exact traffic jam.
It is a really profound challenge trying to navigate a fiercely busy, action-packed life. I mean, managing teams, dealing with family dynamics, hitting deadlines, all without completely burning out or just, losing your fundamental peace of mind.
Yeah, and we have an incredible stack of source material provided by you, our listener, to help us map this out. We're looking at translations, commentaries, and deep analyses of Chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita,
Right. Specifically, we're exploring Karma Yoga.
which is the path of action. Our stack includes insights from Vedanta Vision, the Anadi Foundation, Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien, ISK Khan, and Yes Vedanta.
Such a great mix of perspectives.
It really is. And to set the stage, we're dropping right into the middle of the original traffic jam. So the warrior Arjuna is standing in a chariot between two massive, roaring armies, and he is paralyzed.
Utterly paralyzed by a moral and existential dilemma.
Right. He's looking at all this impending violence and wondering if he should just, drop his weapons, retreat to a cave, and seek spiritual peace, or take the terrible action required of him.
And Krishna, who is acting as his guide here, he doesn't offer a simple multiple choice answer. Instead, he delivers this comprehensive breakdown of the mechanics of human action. And Krishna's first absolute rule, like the foundation of this entire philosophy, is that no one can remain without action, not even for a fraction of a second.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because that sounds, honestly, like an exaggeration.
How so?
Well, if I go lock myself in a dark room and just sit perfectly still, I'm choosing inaction. I am doing nothing.
Right, I get why it looks that way, but physically, your heart is still pumping blood. Your lungs are drawing oxygen, your cells are dividing.
Okay, biologically, sure.
But psychologically, too. Your mind is still producing a relentless stream of thoughts, judgments, and memories. You are forced to act by the inherent machinery of your own biology and consciousness. Inaction is literally impossible.
Wow. Which means we are constantly generating what the sources call karma.
Exactly.
And, in the West, we tend to treat that word like a cosmic revenge system. Like, someone cuts you off in traffic and you think, oh, karma's going to get them.
Right, like a vending machine for punishment.
Yeah. But the texts break down karma into a highly specific psychological and spiritual framework with 3 distinct categories.
First, there are actions that yield positive results and, elevate your circumstances.
Right.
Second, there are actions that bind us to a cosmic law of accountability. These are the actions driven entirely by personal gain, selfish desire, or ego.
So doing things just for yourself.
Right. When you act purely to extract a reward for yourself, you create a karmic ledger. It's basically a psychological debt that ties you down.
And the third category is the ultimate goal.
Right.
What the texts call a karma.
Yes, a karma, which translates to right action or action without any karmic reaction. It's the art of moving through the world and doing what needs to be done without accumulating that binding psychological debt.
I have to challenge this premise, though.
Go for it.
If acting selfishly creates this heavy cosmic debt and trying to achieve perfect karma sounds incredibly difficult, I mean, it really does, why not just quiet quit life?
Ah, right. Just check out.
Yeah. If I keep my head down, do the absolute bare minimum at my desk job, and avoid taking on any real responsibility, aren't I effectively minimizing my footprint and avoiding bad karma?
Well, that assumes doing nothing has no systemic impact, and Krishna addresses this exact loophole.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To illustrate the mechanics of this, one of the commentaries uses a really vivid scenario. Imagine a police officer standing on the edge of a violent riot.
Okay.
If that officer decides to cross his arms and just watch, claiming he wants to remain peaceful and avoid the karma of using force, he isn't actually avoiding anything.
Okay, but a police officer is an extreme example. Lives are directly on the line there. What about my example of the regular office worker doing data entry? If they just check out mentally, who cares?
The mechanism is exactly the same, just at a different scale. If the office worker neglects their duty, the burden of their incomplete work falls onto their colleagues,
Oh, I see.
right? Those colleagues become stressed, they go home and snap at their kids, and the company's overall health declines. Neglecting a duty is not a neutral state. It's an active choice.
Exactly. It's an active choice that disrupts the ecosystem around you. It creates resentment, stagnation, and profound negative consequences for your own conscience. You cannot dodge the battlefield of life by pretending you aren't on it.
So if quiet quitting actually accelerates our karmic debt, and we're forced by nature to take action anyway, what does safe action actually look like? How do we interact with the world without getting tangled up in it?
That requires a fundamental shift in how we view our relationship to the world, which brings us to the mechanism of yajna.
Yajna. Literally, the word translates to a Vedic ritual, like a complex, ancient fire ceremony, right?
On the surface.
But the commentaries reveal that the true meaning of yajna is an attitude of contribution. It's the recognition of our absolute interconnectedness, like feeling isolated and alone is a modern psychological glitch.
Well put.
But biological and spiritual connectedness is a hard fact.
What's fascinating here is how the text observes this principle of yajna playing out in the natural world. It isn't an artificial human construct. Animals perform yajna instinctively. The bird of paradise example from the sources illustrates this beautifully.
Oh, I love that one.
Right. During mating season, the male bird performs this ridiculously elaborate, colorful, vibrating dance. It offers up its energy, its beauty, its vitality, without any signed contract guaranteeing a reward.
Right, it's not holding back.
Exactly. It doesn't hold back 20% of its effort just in case the female isn't impressed. It is literally programmed to contribute its full energy to the whole simply because that is its nature.
And historically, human beings understood this deep interdependence. The texts discuss our relationship with devas, or deities.
Okay, but we should clarify that.
Yes, it's crucial to understand that these aren't framed simply as magical beings floating in the clouds. In a deeper philosophical sense, devas represent an ancient, profound recognition of the Earth's biosphere and ecological interdependence long before modern science mapped the carbon cycle.
Yeah, like the text mentions a tree diva or water diva. It's an acknowledgement that the tree provides the oxygen your brain needs to function, and the water cycle sustains your crops.
And when you acknowledge these forces as divas, you are forced to shift your mental framework from extraction to reverence. You realize you are not a self-made island.
Right. You rely on the sun, the soil, the atmosphere.
The sources point out that this specific attitude of gratitude, this yajna, is the only thing that prevents a species from blindly consuming its environment until total ecological collapse.
It takes everyday survival and turns it from a transactional relationship into a sacred one.
Absolutely.
And this mechanism scales up to human relationships, too. The sources analyze the vivaha, which is the Vedic marriage ritual.
Which is very different from the modern view.
Completely. In the West, we tend to view a wedding as the ultimate romantic bubble. Like, you love me, I love you, let's merge our bank accounts.
Right. Just the two of us against the world.
Yeah. But the vivaha involves taking 7 physical steps together around a fire. And those steps represent a divine team effort.
The marriage is explicitly designed as a shared spiritual growth trajectory.
Right. They vow to support each other's nourishment, strength, wealth, happiness, children, health, and lifelong friendship. The relationship itself becomes a yajna.
A vehicle to contribute to the community.
Exactly. To a higher purpose, rather than just two people isolating themselves from the world to stare into each other's eyes.
However, the text offers a severe warning about this path.
A warning.
Yes. When you live a life of deep contribution and alignment with the cosmic order, it brings immense power and prosperity. The text referred to this as the wish-fulfilling cow, or kamatanya.
Oh, right.
Your purified actions start yielding incredible, tangible results. But power without discernment is incredibly dangerous.
Like the cautionary tale of the king who performed intense yajna and was granted the ultimate boon, the golden touch.
Exactly. He acquired immense power, but his intellect was entirely blinded by greed.
Yeah.
When his beloved daughter ran to hug him, he lacked the presence of mind to step back. He embraced her and turned her into a lifeless statue of solid gold.
Man. That tragedy highlights the exact paradox of human psychology. If living a life of contribution of yajna brings harmony, connection, and prosperity, why do we constantly self-sabotage?
It's the big question.
Why is it so incredibly hard to maintain that mindset?
Well, Arjuna asks Krishna this very question, and it is painfully relatable. He essentially asks, what compels a person to commit harmful acts against their own will as if they are being dragged by force?
Yeah, like, why do you eat the entire sleeve of cookies when you swore you were eating healthy?
Right.
Why do you send that vicious email when you promised yourself you'd be more patient? Why do we actively choose the things we know will make us miserable?
Krishna diagnoses this human glitch by introducing the concept of the three gunas.
The gunas.
Yes, you can think of these as the three underlying operating systems that drive all material nature and human behavior.
Okay, let's break these down.
First is tamas, which is the operating system of ignorance, lethargy, and inertia.
Okay.
It's the couch potato mode where you just want to numb out and avoid reality. Second is rajas, which is passion, restlessness, and frantic, feverish activity. It is the hustle culture mode.
I would definitely know that.
And the third is sattva, which is purity, harmony, and crystal clear lucidity. It is the flow state where you see the whole board clearly.
And while we all oscillate between these three states, Krishna points to one specific vulnerability that causes our self-sabotage.
He reveals that the true enemy is never external. It is not your boss, your spouse, or the economy. Yeah. The enemy is desire, and it is entirely fueled by the agitated, relentless energy of the Rajas guna.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text explains the mechanics of how desire operates.
Right.
It is fundamentally insatiable. It's like trying to put out a roaring fire by pouring gasoline on it. You convince yourself, if I just get this one promotion, my anxiety will disappear.
We all do that.
Right. You get the promotion, the fire flares up, and 3 days later you are agonizing over the next milestone.
And the most dangerous part of this mechanism is what happens when desire is blocked. When your desire is thwarted, it immediately mutates into anger.
Wow.
And anger is the great destroyer of the human intellect. When you fall into a rage, your prefrontal cortex, your ability to reason and see consequences, effectively shuts down.
That explains why someone getting cut off in traffic completely loses their mind. It isn't actually about the car.
No, not at all.
It's the thwarted desire to get home quickly, mutating into an anger that makes them willing to risk a collision just to win.
The sources use three vivid metaphors to explain exactly how this rajasic desire obscures our pure intellect. And they represent different depths of psychological conditioning.
Yeah, the first one is that desire covers our wisdom like smoke over a fire. This feels like a light temporary veil.
Exactly.
Like when you get a sudden flash of annoyance because someone interrupted you, but you catch yourself, take a deep breath, and the smoke blows away. Your clarity returns almost instantly.
The second metaphor is that desire covers our wisdom like dust on a mirror.
That's a bit heavier.
This is a much thicker obscuration. You cannot just blow dust off a mirror. It requires active, daily scraping and polishing.
Right.
In spiritual terms, this means you need consistent daily practices sahana to actively clean your mind of the buildup of everyday selfish habits and ego.
And the third metaphor absolutely blew my mind. It says, desire covers our wisdom like an embryo hidden deep inside a womb.
It's a powerful image.
It represents profound, unconscious conditioning. Maybe it's deep-seated childhood trauma or ancestral patterns. You can't just think your way out of it, and you can't forcefully scrub it away. It requires immense time, patience, and gestation for that truth to finally emerge and be dealt with.
These metaphors beautifully illustrate a core hopeful truth. The pure intellect is always there. The fire is burning, the mirror is reflective, the life is in the womb.
Yeah.
But it is constantly veiled by our relentless desires. To show how a person can actually master this in real time, one of the commentaries shares the historical account of Ali, a legendary warrior.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Ali is in the absolute heat of a brutal life-or-death battle. He finally overpowers his opponent, pins him to the ground, and raises his sword to deliver the final, fatal strike.
Okay.
But at that exact fraction of a second, the opponent spits directly into Ali's face.
Oh, wow. A massive trigger for thwarted desire and ego.
Instantly, Ali feels a massive, blinding surge of rage rise up inside him. But instead of bringing the sword down, fueled by that anger, Ali freezes.
He just stops.
He drops the weapon. He physically steps back and refuses to fight.
Because he realized his internal motivation had shifted.
Precisely.
If he killed the man in that moment, he wouldn't be executing his solemn duty as a warrior. He'd be committing murder simply to satisfy his own bruised ego. He recognized the inner enemy trying to hijack his intellect, and he shut it down.
It is the ultimate display of self-mastery, but it forces us to ask, how do we actually train our minds to drop the sword like Ali did? How do you and I defeat this enemy when we're overwhelmed with deadlines and stress on a random Tuesday?
Right. And according to Krishna, The anchor against this storm is Svadharma, which translates to your unique sacred duty or your inner calling.
Yes.
It's the specific role you were uniquely wired to play based on your nature, your talents, and your circumstances.
And the only way to execute your svadharma without accumulating that binding karmic debt is through the practice of detachment.
Okay, wait. If we connect this to the bigger picture, I have to push back on the word detachment.
I figured you might.
It carries a lot of modern baggage. Like, if I'm running a company or I'm a parent, and I'm told to perform my duties with total detachment to the results, doesn't that just make me apathetic?
It sounds like it would.
How can I be a good parent if I'm emotionally detached from whether my kid succeeds or fails?
It is a critical distinction to make, and the texts separate this into two categories to prevent that exact misunderstanding.
Okay.
There is jivasristi, which is unnatural attachment. This is a love that has been deeply distorted by fear, possessiveness, and a desperate need for control.
Give me an example.
Like saying, I need my child to get into this specific college so that I feel validated as a successful parent.
Yeah.
That is what you must detach from.
Because that is just the ego disguised as love.
Exactly. But then there is Ishvarasristi, which is natural attachment. This is pure, unselfish care and dedication. Krishna is not telling you to become a cold, unfeeling robot.
Okay, that makes more sense.
True detachment means you take all of your intellectual energy, all of your passion, and you anchor it entirely in the execution of the present action. You refuse to let your mind dissipate into agonizing over past mistakes.
Right.
And you refuse to let it spin out into anxiety about the future outcome that you cannot control.
A great modern example of this is someone trying to figure out their career path. Think of a corporate lawyer who is completely miserable, working 80 hours a week because they are attached to the prestige and the salary.
Right, that's jivasristi.
But if they realize their actual svadharma, their true nature is teaching, they might take a massive pay cut to become a professor. They pour all their energy into their students, that's Ishvarasristi, but they don't tie their fundamental self-worth to whether every single student gets an A.
They just do the work.
They just do the work.
And the texts point out that even individuals who have achieved total enlightenment, people who have zero personal desires left to fulfill and no karmic debt to repay, even they continue to work incredibly hard at their svadharma.
Which seems counterintuitive. I mean, if they've crossed the spiritual finish line, why keep running the race?
They do it to set an undeniable standard for the rest of the world. They lead by example. The Gita uses the historical figure of King Janaka to illustrate this. Janaka was a fully realized, enlightened master, yet he didn't abandon his kingdom to meditate in a forest.
He stayed in the thick of it.
He managed complex economics, dealt with political rivals, and raised a family. He engaged with the chaotic world to demonstrate to his people how to take immense action without being psychologically bound by it.
And that leads to Krishna's ultimate concluding advice in this chapter, which completely reframes how we view success.
It really does.
He states that it is far better to perform your own duty, your svadharma, imperfectly, than to perform someone else's duty perfectly.
It is a profound rejection of our modern obsession with comparison and imitation.
So, what does this all mean for us? Let's zoom out and synthesize this journey. First, Krishna shatters the illusion that we can opt out. Action is a biological and psychological inevitability.
Unavoidable.
Second, to prevent those unavoidable actions from binding us to a ledger of suffering, we have to transform them into yajna actions rooted in gratitude and a deep recognition of our ecological and social interdependence.
Beautifully said.
Third, we have to constantly monitor our internal operating systems, guarding against the restless desires of the Rajas guna that inevitably mutate into blinding anger.
Because that's the true enemy.
Right. And finally, we achieve this mastery by fiercely committing to our own unique path, our svadharma, anchoring our minds entirely in the present effort while releasing our desperate grip on the outcome.
And this brings the philosophy directly to you, listening right now. Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes board meeting, whether you are managing a chaotic household, or you are simply trying to navigate a grueling commute without losing your temper, your everyday actions are the actual proving ground.
Yes.
You do not need to abandon your responsibilities to find peace. The spreadsheet, the difficult conversation, the mundane chores, if approached with the right internal framework, your daily life is the yajna.
It takes the deeply mundane and elevates it to the sacred. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that idea of svadharma.
Okay.
We spend so much of our lives utterly terrified of failing.
Right.
We look at other people's lanes, we see the rewards they're getting, and we try to mimic their trajectory because we want a guaranteed result.
All the time.
But based on the relentless wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, what if the absolute greatest tragedy in life isn't failing? What if the greatest tragedy is succeeding perfectly at a life that actually belonged to someone else?
Wow.
Think about that the next time you feel gridlocked in the paralysis of choice. The traffic jam disappears the moment you decide to own your specific lane and drive it with purpose.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.